Good and decent people of YouTube, welcome to Political Drain, where we sift through the sewage at the end of a long pipeline of corporate media in order to expose the liars and the charlatans hell-bent on manipulating you for power and for profit. My name is Bruce Lively, and no, you're not crazy. Today, we're going to talk about Project 2025. You may have heard about this, but just not know if it's really as bad as everyone says it's going to be. Or maybe you just haven't heard enough about it at all. So, first, I'm going to tell you what it is, and then I'm going to do what I think everyone else has failed to do in the reporting of this. And that is to get rid of all of the big words that are meant to confuse you, ignore as best I can the policies meant to divide you, and that whether or not you're a Republican or a Democrat, doesn't matter. I'm going to put the language itself and the ideas written in its own words in the actual fact-based light of history with one-to-one comparisons of what it says it wants to do with what some of the worst actors in history have actually done and how they got it done. So hopefully at the end of this 5-part series, yes, 5-part series, you're left with no doubt as to why so many people are scared of this document and what it represents. Also, I want to give you the tools necessary to decide for yourself whether or not it's just fear-mongering and hyperbole. Let's be honest. It could be just fear-mongering and hyperbole. It wouldn't be the first time, right? So, what is it? Project 2025 is an agenda. It's put in place by the Heritage Foundation for the next conservative president to promise to uphold and actively follow from the first day that they're elected. Let me read it directly from the website so there's no confusion. It's not enough for conservatives to win elections. If we're going to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left, we need both governing agenda and the right people in place, ready to carry this agenda out day one of the next conservative administration. This is the goal of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project. The project will build on 4 pillars that will collectively pave the way for an effective conservative administration. And there you have it. How they plan on doing this is why I have a 5-part series, 4 pillars and a conclusion. And don't worry, if you don't know the Heritage Foundation or what it is or who the authors are and all the necessary history and context, just don't worry. That's why the conclusion is its own freaking 20-minute show. Trust me, I got you. I just don't want to cloud the information in this document itself. Starting with Pillar 1, the policy. And this is a 920-page document, okay? A third of it is written in legalese, so good luck understanding it. A third of it reads like a religious text, so yeah. And a third of it, well, it's in the form of promises it requires any conservative president to make the day they become the Republican nominee. And it's obviously written with Trump in mind. It's just honest. But it doesn't have to be. Any Republican campaigning to be the president in 2025 that wants the millions of dollars in backing and the endorsement from the Heritage Foundation, not to mention the powerful connections of the Heritage Foundation, of which it has many, again, you're gonna want to stay through till the conclusion. But any nominee who wants these things and actually expects to win has to make these promises, supposedly. I'll spare you the 920 pages and just get to what's important, all right? Promise 1. Restore the family at the center place of American life and protect our children. A. The next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency, regulation, contract, grant, and any piece of legislation that exists. And what was just said? In order to preserve free speech, that's the First Amendment, we will erase every word we don't like. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to let you think about it. In order to preserve free speech, we will erase every word we don't like from every law that exists. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of those words and see if we can reasonably find any concerns. Reproductive health, regulation, and any piece of legislation that exists. So, no regulations on the treatment of menstrual bleeding then. The cleanliness and the sanitation of gynecologists' offices. What about lactation specialists for breastfeeding, or, God forbid, the regulation of the breast milk donated from recently birthing mothers for the use of millions of mothers who have trouble breastfeeding for the first few weeks, and that keeps their babies alive? I'm just kidding. Like women are actually people. No, for real now. Okay, let's get to the people that actually matter. Let's talk about erectile dysfunction medication. No regulations on that? Might work, it might not. Huh? What about low testosterone treatment? Or low sperm count? Well, who needs kids anyway? What about castration? Like you see, if you delete regulation on reproductive health in any piece of legislation that exists, castration is legal as long as a doctor, or if you're under 18, a parent, says it's the right thing to do. Look, the political gaming on what women can or can't do, or whether or not abortion is murder or not, is not what I care about in this document. Believe it or not. And it's not because I don't care, it's because it's just another thing used to divide us. I promised you a one-to-one comparison, and this is what it looks like when you delete the terms reproductive health, reproductive rights, and regulations in any piece of legislation that exists. And that language goes way past abortion laws and trans people on your swimming team. This is what it looks like.
They were gruesome, painful treatments. Beastly. The intense pain erased all feeling.
My name is Professor Karl Klauberg. I performed forced sterilizations. From March 1943 to January 1945, I subjected 280 women to trials. 150 were sterilized according to my method.
I'm campaigning against practice female genital mutilation, and I start the campaign. What has happened to many other women who today cannot have babies, who have died already for bleeding, who have been faced the consequence of the female genital mutilation today, is a silent killer.
I don't think that's what most voters would agree with. I don't think they'd enjoy knowing that the language they're choosing to vote for could even lead to that, even if they think that it's not their party that's going to do it. But let's get to the B section. There's a lot of sections on this promise, but the most important, the ones that I want to bring to attention with the comparisons, B. Conservatives should gratefully celebrate the greatest pro-family win in generations, overturning Roe versus Wade. The next conservative administration should push as hard as possible to protect the unborn in every jurisdiction in America. And what was just said there? Even though we know that every state trying to ban abortion completely has those laws shot down by their own voters, our next president should push a national ban on abortion anyway. Sounds like they don't want to represent you, they just want to rule you. And if you think it's a stretch, what I'm saying, here's another excerpt from the 920-page Pillar 1 that I didn't get to show you.
A later chapter in the manifesto on the Department of Health and Human Services advocates that the president should direct agencies to rescind regulations interpreting sex discrimination provisions as prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, sex characteristics, etc. This would strip protections for LGBTQ folks, as well as women, it seems, given that gender identity is listed, effectively making current regulations around sex discrimination fully obsolete.
I don't know. It seems a bit much. Let's get to promise number 2. Dismantle the administration state and return self-governance to the American people. The term administrative state refers to the policy-making work done by the bureaucracies of all the federal government's departments, agencies, and millions of employees. Now here, I'll let law communicator Lisa Miller explain it way better than I ever could. And if you don't know who she is, you need to check out her YouTube channel like ASAP. But here we go.
Admin agencies are also referred to as commissions, boards, authorities, bureaus, offices, departments, divisions, etc. They're created by executive order, meaning when the president says so, or by Congress. The first federal admin agency was the State Department, created in 1789, when Congress was still chock-a-block full of original framers of the Constitution, I might add, which does back up claims that the administrative bodies are implied in the Constitution. The idea behind creating these agencies, instead of having Congress or the president alone in charge of implementing the laws, because it turns out it takes a lot of work to run a country, and agencies are in charge of creating a lot of regulations. Further, agencies are staffed by subject matter experts, at least in theory. So, for example, the people in the EPA have spent their careers learning about environmental policy and regulation, and are therefore much better positioned to implement a law than the lone president or congresspeople. And the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the constitutionality of administrative agencies, and tends to give a lot of deference to their decisions because they are the subject matter experts.
Well said. I think that gives us a better understanding. So why do they think all of this bureaucrat stuff is such a bad idea? Well, according to the Project 2025, one example is bureaucrats at the Department of Education inject racist, anti-American, ahistorical propaganda into Americans' classrooms. Well, if by ahistorical and anti-American you mean the biographies of Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, both of which were taken out of the schools in Florida under the same definition, then I'd have to disagree with that policy. But I digress, okay? That's not what this is about. It's not about whether or not I agree with it. This is about showing you the dangers of mandating and normalizing this type of thinking, whether it's Mein Kampf or Martin Luther King, whether it's The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump or Tired of Winning by people who hate Donald Trump. All of those books have to be available, because if not, this is what banning any of those books looks like.
It's May 1933, and all across Germany, students at universities are carrying out a series of book burnings that target people with a quote-unquote un-German spirit. At these book burnings, the works of men like Freud, Einstein, Mann, and Erich Remarque, who had written the book All Quiet on the Western Front, are thrown into the fire. The largest of these book burnings occurred in Berlin, where an estimated 40,000 people gathered to hear a speech by propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. In the speech, he declared that Jewish intellectualism is dead, and said that it was the right of the students to quote-unquote clean up the debris of the past. It was this cleaning up of the past that was going to pave the way to a very dark future. Also included in these book burnings was the works of Heinrich Heine, who in 1822 said, "Where they burn books, they will in the end burn human beings too."
You see, they are not mad because we're burning. They're mad at what we are burning.
While they were pulling the book Mouse, a story of the Holocaust, from bookshelves in Texas, here in Nashville, they threw books like Harry Potter and Twilight into the fire.
So
passage of this Pillar 1. The conservative promise lays out how to use many of these tools, including how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. There is the curious language that seems to purposefully contradict itself, just like preserving free speech by deleting words. This time it's championing democracy by taking democracy away. Think about this: how to muzzle woke propaganda. And I remind you that woke still has no definitive and objective meaning. For instance, if you think that it's a woke idea that the pharmaceutical industry is pushing a vaccine on you and your eyes are open to it, so you are now woke. Or what if you think that the 2020 election was stolen and others just can't see it because they're just not woke enough? Yeah. Do you see how easy that was for me to turn it around on someone else? If you're a conservative now and you think that muzzling woke ideas without definitions is okay because it only is going to hurt them, the others, understand that every authoritarian government said the same things to get power. And when all the scary wokeness is gone, they turned it on the people that voted for them and changed the definitions in order to keep power. That's how it works.
Hitler's party puts itself forward as a protection force against a supposed communist coup. This is the fear, more than of Hitler, of large sections of the middle classes.
SA commandos hunt down communists, social democrats, and other alleged public enemies. In barracks, factories, and cellars, the party militias construct so-called wild concentration camps. The interrogation methods are barbarous.
These are simply one-to-one comparisons based on the language in the document. It doesn't really matter if you think someone's going to do it or not do it, because when that is the plan, anyone who wants to keep the power can do it is bad enough. And I hope we don't need to explain that any further. Let's talk about the State Department. If we're talking about bureaucracies, this is basically who runs them. Quote, although the department has also evolved throughout the years, at least in the modern era, there is one significant problem that the next president must address to be successful. There is a tug of war between presidents and bureaucracies, and that resistance is much starker under conservative presidents, due largely to the fact that large swaths of the State Department's workforce are left-wing and predisposed to disagree with the conservative president's policy agenda and vision. The next administration must take swift and decisive steps to reforge the department into a lean and functional diplomatic machine that serves the president and thereby the American people. What was just said? So now, instead of an oath to the Constitution or the truth or an expertise in your field, and you'll see why I used those words in part 2, this lean machine takes an oath to the president, one person, as a stand-in for all Americans. Consequences be damned. Let me show you what that looks like.
Ich schwöre bei Gott, diesen heiligen Eid, dass ich dem Führer des Deutschen Reiches und Volkes unbedingten Gehorsam lässt und als tapferer Soldat bereit sein will, mein Leben einzusetzen für diesen Eid, Oberbefehlshaber der Wehrmacht, Adolf Hitler.
That's good enough.
So, down to brass tacks here, guys. In all honesty, Pillar 1 is, to me, the least scary. I know it seems funny, but it's true. because it's simply just a ramping up of policies we already know the Republican leadership has been fighting for years. It's not new. It's definitely an escalation, and that's scary, for sure, but it's not new. What makes this scary is this.
Just days ago, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney expressing similar concerns about an abuse of presidential power to Savannah.
You've said we're sort of sleepwalking into dictatorship in the United States. Dictatorship. Is that what we would have?
Are you stupid? Huh? Are you an idiot? What kind of surprised, pearl-clutching question did that woman just ask? You see, the policy itself was predictable. It is. The scary part is even after all the anti-democratic language that goes along with how they plan on getting those policies done, is that these are the idiots that we have reporting it to us. The fools that think, well, they look surprised at least when an ultra-right winger Liz Cheney, the same Liz Cheney who voted with Trump 99% of the time, says the word dictatorship. They provide just the right amount of doubt the voter needs to dismiss it. Like it can't really happen here. Look, on the next installment, I'm going to show you why Pillar 2 is way scarier of a document. And when you add in that 99% voting record and the incompetence of a media that refuses to open its eyes and take this seriously, I think you'll agree with me. I'll see you in the next one.